Welcome to the Truth About Employed Physicians podcast, a weekly show where we take you behind the scenes of the professional healthcare industry and reveal the little-known methods highly successful physicians, doctors, and professionals are executing right now to maximize their income, reduce their financial liabilities, and most importantly, regain the freedom to live their lives on their terms. Subscribe to the Truth About Employed Physicians podcast today so you don't miss a single episode of this highly valuable information from our host, a veteran physician with more than 20 years in practice and counting. Now, your host, Dr. Incorporated.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Incorporated bringing you the latest episode of The Truth About Employed Physicians. I'm so glad that you chose to join myself and my son John today in our continuing conversations about the young doctor's life and just some of the interesting parts of being a doctor. The premise of this series has been to kind of bring forward some conversations of a father to a son, of life in medicine and how we can sort of share some ideas and concepts that are bilateral, things that you know and have learned that can make my life better, and vice versa, things that I know because I've gone through these last many years that can be shared with you to make your life a little bit better as well. And so we're glad you're with us today. And maybe you're listening to us driving home from work. Maybe you're working out on the treadmill. Maybe you're off hiking somewhere, and you're just kind of taking this all in. And I just want to say to you as a physician that I'm really grateful for the work that you do every day, for the way that you take care of people like myself. I'm a human being. I'm a patient. I'm a doctor, and the fact that you were so tuned into and so dedicated to the patients that you took care of today, that you gave them your best and really provided great care for them. It's just assumed that's what we do in medicine. But man, I'm a guy who realizes it takes a lot of energy and a lot of mental energy to do that every day, patient after patient after patient. And thank you for the efforts you're doing and for the way that you take that very seriously. You really do make a difference in people's lives. We're going to talk today about really what I call the great life. The great life as a doctor. And boy, I consider myself very fortunate to be in medicine, to practice medicine, to live the life of a doctor in a small community. That's kind of my chosen gig. I like being in a smaller community. I actually grew up in the county that I work in, and I'm really enjoy all the elements of that, and I think it's provided for me a great life, and I believe it's provided a great life for you, John, as you grew up here and went to school here and got to partake in all the things that we got to in the doctor's life. And so, but I also want to bring forward to you in that great life that there are some interesting challenges that exist with being a doctor, and sort of underneath all that great life are some decisions that are made even year after year after year that really play a role in me and my family, in your case, you getting to experience that great life. And so one of the whys in the road that I made 25 years ago was that I chose to be an employed physician. This was back in the day when a lot of the physicians were actually just beginning to make that transition from private practice models into the traditional model of that we see now of being an employed physician. And I caught that wave at the beginning of that process, and it's really worked out great for me. I love virtually every element of being a employed physician. And in fact, when I came to this community and began working here, again, over 25 years ago, there was a group of us as physicians that began working together. And man, we had a great group together. There was about, it kind of came and gone, a little bit fluid, but there was 4 to 8 of us at various times that really worked together. And a lot of them were peers of yours in terms of their kids. Like the kids were the same age,
yeah.
And in fact, one of my
grew up together, graduated high school at the same time for like 4 or 5 of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were practicing partners, but we were friends. We went to church together. We were neighbors. We lived beside each other. And you and that group really, especially thinking of Dr. Joel, his family, you were pretty tight with them, weren't you?
Yeah. Very tight.
Yeah, it was kind of a good life, wasn't it, in that way?
Yeah, that's it. Someone might say it was great.
Yeah, two doctors who were great friends, who were working partners, who did a lot of life together, and we went on vacations together, fishing trips together. We did a lot of stuff together as families, and I tell you, that's a rich part of medicine. When you can have partners that you're working with in your group that you enjoy both in the office or in the clinic or in the hospital, but also love being with them outside of the clinic and outside of the hospital just as much. It is such a special thing. And boy, there's a group of us that just really enjoyed being together beyond medicine. But the fact of the matter is, frankly, we were all pretty doggone good doctors. Most of us were all chief residents coming out of our various residency programs. We were high-flying primary care doctors that did a great job, and our practice grew, and we loved being together. And so we were together for about 8 to 10 years, and just really hit a home run. I mean, I used to say to your mom, my wife, I can't believe I'm getting paid this much money to do this. Like, this is the best thing in the world. Like, I love going in and doing this job every day. And it was powerful. Now, you probably remember those days. Those were a lot of fun days, weren't they?
Yeah. They were great.
And you were young enough, you probably remember some of it, mostly blind to the professional side of things.
Definitely.
But certainly aware of the benefits of the doctor's life, right?
Yep.
Boy, you used to be with me on the sidelines of the sports games that we'd go to for the high school football games and the basketball games and all that stuff. Of course, that probably made you feel important at that time, didn't it?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, you thought you're pretty cool getting to do
pretty
that,
cool.
right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed it. I thought it was the best seat in the stadium, was being right down there in the sidelines watching things play out. But
catching the field goals afterwards and extra points.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Usually getting hit in the face instead of catching it.
Right, when you were younger, that definitely was the case. But, and back in that day, that was just volunteer world. I mean, I just did it because it was the right thing to do for the community. And
that's what you did in a small town.
That's what you do in a small town. That's exactly right. But it was a great life. I mean, it was. But the day came when my employer came to us as doctors and basically, and I'm not going to go through all the sort of details, but in essence said, you're going to get a pay cut. And we're like, why are we getting a pay cut? We're making all kinds of money for you. We've got a very successful practice. We're beloved in the community. I mean, we like each other. Like, what are you doing this for? And they basically said, well, based on the performance metrics of our employment contracts, you guys are outliers because you make too much money. We were pretty productive. We worked pretty hard and were pretty productive because we did holistic primary care, inpatient, outpatient, everything, OB, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we really were, we did work hard. And I can remember on Saturday mornings or on the weekends going in and rounding on, 10, 15 patients on a weekend in addition to all the other responsibilities you had when you're on call. I mean, it was, looking back, we were working pretty hard. But we were, and we enjoyed it. But our employer came and said, you know what, we're gonna put a cap on what you guys are going to be compensated. And the reason is because we're concerned that we could look like we're overpaying you to the IRS, who does audits on hospital systems and how they're paying their physicians, and so we feel like the right thing to do is to put a cap on how much you can earn. And that didn't set very well. Would that set well with you if you were in that position?
I think you should eat what you kill.
Yeah, right. I think that's a given.
Whatever work you do, you should get paid for it. And if you don't want to pay me, then I guess you don't want me to work.
Yeah, right. Of course, that's probably why you want to go into surgery. You have that mentality, but that's how surgeons do think of life. But at the end of the day, I'm all for fair market value pay, right? I mean, I'm not. You don't pay me more than I'm worth. Don't give me some under the table deal, like you said.
Pay me what I'm worth for the work that I do. If I'm not doing the work, don't pay me.
That's
but
exactly
if I am
right.
doing the work, then I should get paid.
Yeah, And that's
makes sense. That just makes sense.
That only makes sense. That's just that's sort of a fair world view, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what began to happen is, and there were probably a lot of other economic factors playing into the hospital's decision at the time, but at the end of the day, I mean, they were going to do it. Okay, and so. It sort of led us to either make a decision, like to just sign on the dotted line, renew our contracts, and say, okay, I'll take less pay for doing the same amount of work, or we'll do something differently. And ended up, our whole group exploded over it. Several guys left, went to do different things, and it really all got narrowed down to only me and another doctor that were left there. Dr. Miller and myself were there, and do you remember those days at all when we went through that?
Loosely.
Yeah.
It was very stressful and I just know you worked a lot. You're very busy because you had all that going on, but you also had to take on all the patients from all the other doctors who were leaving.
Kind of reminds me of medical school and residency. It's like a cave experience, where I just was trying to keep my head above the water and sort of figure things out. What I knew was, obviously, like most doctors in a situation like that, I knew I could either leave or stay and figure out what the next rodeo looked like. To be honest, I liked my employer, other than the fact that they were trying to give me a pay cut. I liked working for them. I liked the system that I was working for, and although many of my friends and peers were gone, I saw opportunities that existed for me to continue to practice there if built the right way. So in essence, what I did to kind of get back to the great life that I wanted to have, I worked with some consultants because they brought forward to me a deeper sense of what my real monetary value was to a healthcare system because of the work that I was doing. They brought forward to me a deeper sense that because my contract did not have a non-compete element to it, that in essence the patients that I was taking care of were sort of mine. I had a market share, which gave me greater negotiating power. And because I didn't realize all the different employment models are out there, I thought that really the only model that a doctor could work in was this kind of traditional employment model where you just do what they say. You sign the dotted line, you get paid whatever the compensation rate is, assume that it's fair, and that's the end of the story. You get some benefits to go with it, and you assume those benefits are all good, and you kind of move on. And what they helped me to realize back in the day, and you saw this happen, was that there are some other models of employment that exist that are sort of flavors of employment. And I transitioned to an employment light model that involved me forming my own corporation, my own professional corporation. I also bought a medical building. I actually bought not a non-medical building and converted it to a medical building and moved my practice there and began to rent that medical office building to my employer where my clinic was going to be located now. Do you remember that happening?
Yep. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, that was quite a process to go through that. But really what it began to do was help me to see and understand that, just really the very genesis of this whole social media site, Doctor Incorporated, and that is that really doctors as a whole are sort of mini businesses. They are sort of corporations in and of themselves who generate income, who provide revenue to hospital systems. And although I wasn't interested in the old traditional private practice model, I didn't realize that there was a flavor that existed that really was sort of an in-between, an employment light, where I could form my own corporation, still be employed by the hospital by that corporation, and yet own my own medical office building and lease it to the hospital. And once my consultant helped me to sort that out and begin to get a handle on that and reorganize myself around that, I tell you, it's one of the most important decisions that helped me really survive the edge of burnout, as you saw me working really hard and you recognize that, but also renewed my sense of control and autonomy over my professional life.
Right.
And you probably saw that happen to me as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, your version of my medical life is split in two. There's your younger years that you were pretty oblivious to really what the professional world was like, and then there's your later years in our home where you were a little more tuned into it, probably.
Yeah.
Do you remember a distinct difference at all?
I feel like it's... I mean, obviously there's been a lot of things that have happened in the later years where I was more busy and less in the home as I was in my later years in high school and went to college and all that stuff. But I think that there's like almost a measurable difference in the amount of stress and enjoyment and satisfaction with your career between when you're going through all of the difficulties that we're going with the hospital and all all of those things, and then where you're at now and where you've been for the last few years, now that you've kind of settled into your new business model and I guess physician model. And, I think it's been a huge improvement for you. I think it's probably one of the best things you ever did for your career was to make those changes. I mean, it's just I just feel like you're able to live your best life while still getting to do what you want to do, which is be a doctor because you love doing that. Yeah. And so I feel like it's been
Yes, sir. Really it's really interesting to me because I do think I have a great life as a doctor. But when I started practice, I thought I had a great life as a doctor too, with all those partners and all those relationships that were so rich. But as the business of medicine began to sort of encroach upon all of that, and it wasn't just the salary piece, there was a whole bunch of other EMR related stuff and a bunch of other junk that just really kind of ruined it.
Well, I think that the benefit of seeing the before versus after is seeing how much if you don't address the business of medicine part, how much it can decrease your satisfaction with your job and how it can increase your stress and can do all of these things, lead to burnout. But when you are properly addressing the business of medicine side, has resulted in sustainable career, greater satisfaction, more autonomy, feeling more control. It's more of a central locus of control rather than your standard employment model, which you feel a little bit like you're operating under an authoritarian regime where you might have your expertise, but they're going to tell you what you're going to do and when you're going to do it and how much of it you're going to do, and you get to do this and X and Y versus structuring it differently. How you transitioned gave you more autonomy, and that just is almost always going to lead to greater satisfaction. In your case it did, and I think it would for most people. And I think for me even now it's that's even more, it almost I feel like medicine almost seems more idyllic now to me than it used to when I first even became interested in medicine.
Because of that?
Well, right, because I became interested in medicine when the
model that I'm in is...
when you were doing your old model. My
see.
first exposure was the old model, and I was interested even in that of what was going on. But now seeing how you're able to practice medicine now in your current model, it's kind of like, wow, now I really want to, now I'm, very invested in medicine. I can see how this can be very satisfactory life for me and very satisfactory career, and I'll be able to have that autonomy and that's why I've always been interested in private practice or group practice because of that autonomy.
Yeah, that's good.
I find that valuable, having that control over yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? Yeah. I didn't realize how important that was to me, having that control and autonomy, until I went through this whole experience. So it's nice to be able to be 25 years later to look back and share with you, as a father would a son, to say, hey, I hope you don't have to go through the pain that I went through to learn the things that I learned. That's why you've heard me say to you on a few occasions, John, you're going to form your own professional corporation. John, you're going to learn to maximize the business side of this process if you become a doctor, because you'll have greater autonomy and have the best life that you can have in that than if you don't.
Right. And you've lived it and you know the difference and you can see how much better it is. It's like, why would you not go down this path that is, in a better path? And, it's kind of interesting to see how physicians used to all be private practice.
Yes.
And there's all this overhead and all this work, and as hospital became more big business, all the physicians became employed.
Yes.
And now now there's all this burnout, and now there's all this,
that's the consequences of it. It is
going
the consequences.
on because there's no autonomy anymore.
That's
you don't
correct.
have any ownership over your own career anymore to to a lot of degrees. And so now pendulum swings back and forth, and now it, eventually comes to a nice middle ground. And I think where you're at is for yourself, that middle ground that has led to a lot more satisfaction for you, and would lead to a lot more satisfaction for a lot of people, I think, who are dealing with burnout or even going into medicine.
Yeah.
Like, I see all these people, really, looking at it from the outside, it's kind of like, why would anyone go into medicine with, the rates of depression and suicide,
right?
Just suicide is just massively higher than the general population among physicians.
Yes.
And sure, they, people get paid more, but there's a lot more in life to than just making a good income. Right. And so, why would you want to do that? Is it possible to not deal with all those, to kind of structure it to where you have a better life and better career out of that? And then I feel like that what you've done shows the answer is yes. You can make it different. You can change it for yourself and make it better.
In fact, what I hope for our audience to hear and see, and what I hope for you to hear and see as well, is that there are different employment models. And I'm all for employment. I think physician employment makes sense on many levels. There are a few specialties who maybe operate better from a private practice model, but by and large, most of us are going to really benefit from the safe harbor of employment. But within the safe harbor of employment, there are a host of different models in the traditional employment model. And I am in no way am trying to sort of point out that employment like I've reorganized under is the best model. I think it's one of multiple that are available, and I wish I would have known back at the beginning of my career that it was a model that existed.
Yeah.
And it maybe at the beginning of my career it even didn't exist. It has kind of progressively developed as sort of the pendulum has swung back. And this is sort of a corrective option for young doctors. And so for you young doctors, I just want to point out that Employment Light and some of the flavors of Employment Light are definitely in your wheelhouse to sort of be able to maximize your autonomy and control back over medicine, which is really leads us back to the great life that's possible. It breaks my heart, to be honest with you, to see my peers and my friends in medicine really getting burnt out, getting depressed, getting just worn down by all the pressures of medicine, when I know what's there, I know how great this life can be in medicine, and to see it all kind of crumbling under the pressures of the traditional employment model, which I think is one of the core root dynamics that kind of has led to this sort of crisis that we have. I think this is just a simple corrective option. And so as you go into practice, I'm glad you're seeing that in me, and I'm glad you're kind of saying, I'm going to do something a little bit different.
Right.
Right. And
I think that, it's a great opportunity for myself and other young medical students, residents, physicians, because you're able to look at what the people before you did and what the result was.
Yes.
And you can say, wow, I don't like that. I don't want to end up like that or have this happen to me or whatever. And so this kind of creates that option to, from day one, have it be better. Yeah. Right? Because it's already been trial run on the people who came before you. They were already the lab rats who went through all the struggles for you. Now you can benefit from the work that they did, just like any innovation in the world, right? Yep. There's the people who really went through the trenches and the dirt to, learn about something and make it happen and so on and so forth. And, now we can fly internationally. And now we can have antiviral medications and antibacterial medications and antiretroviral, medications and all these advances.
Yes.
But it's because of all the hard work and the experiences that other people went through and the pain that other people went through before us. And so I think it would be mistake to not take advantage of those things, right? Like,
that's exactly right.
And so it's the same thing in this scenario where you should take advantage of the experiences of those who came before you and start off on day one doing something better, right?
Yeah.
Like when there's a treatment for a disease that works, why would you go back to an old wives' tale remedy when you could use the one that you know has been battle tested and works? And
so that's exactly right. And so this would be a great opportunity for make a plug for you and for others who are in our listening audience for a group called Simply MD. I don't want to overstate this, but basically they're the people who put together the ideas that really brought together this employment light model with some personal and professional elements that really allow for the total maximization of the model that I'm currently in. And, I didn't see this back when I was starting 25 years ago. And even when I came to that point of crisis more than 10 years ago, I didn't even know this sort of stuff existed until I began to work with a consultant that exposed to me the fact that these things do exist and were opportunities. And that's basically what Simply MD does, is they provide a group of consultants who can help you find your way through this process to find different elements that can help you really regain autonomy and control to have the great life of medicine that we want. So Simply MD is not the only one, but part of my story and narrative is that they are a part of mine. Okay, there are others out there, not a lot. There's a few other groups in the country that can help people with this, but just to make a plug, if you're looking for somebody that can help you in this as we talk about it, I think they'd be a group to consider. And so, this idea of autonomy, this idea of maintaining control, I'm in the whole business elements of it. I'm very interested as we kind of wrap up this segment today. You've always had, as I've seen you, especially go through undergrad and into medical school, but especially now in medical school. Of course, you're married to an accountant, so it might make some sense. But you seem to have a natural interest in business, in finance, personal finance, in the business of medicine and some of the elements associated with it. And I'm just out of curiosity, is there any element of what you observed in me during this zone that has influenced that? Or has that been just more natural, or is it because of your wife's influence in that whole equation? Or kind of how's that all fit together? Is there any relationship?
I don't know. I've always liked business and economics and finance and money, and I've always found it very interesting. And so I think I've always had an idea of sort of owning my own business. Like when I was growing up, I always came up with all sorts of crazy inventions to create a business out of and sell one day, which I haven't done yet, but maybe I will.
Right.
We still got time.
There you go. Could do it.
And in about 15 years, I might have the resources to do so.
Yes.
After all my schooling's done, and all of that. But so I feel like I've always had a natural knack for that, and that's something that I think it's important to be well-rounded and not. I really enjoy medicine, but I like a life outside of medicine. So that's kind of my interest outside of medicine is business and money and finance and personal finance and things like that. And so that's what I spend my time doing. But I do like the idea, and like I said before, I'd always consider maybe a private practice or something like that, because I like the idea of combining business and medicine and kind of taking control of the business of medicine, not just pushing it out for the third parties to control, because I know that a lot of the marginal dollars of profit are lost to those third parties.
Yes, they are.
And so if I know how to do it myself, or if I know the right person to pay to help me do it.
That's right, the outsourcing part of it.
Then I can keep those marginal dollars instead of letting some big organization get all those marginal dollars. And I see no problem in doing so. And just like any other skill or job or profession, you can make it what you want it to be. And for me, that's something that I like. I like that business side of things. And so
I wouldn't want to boil this down to just a topic about the great life is based upon making more money or somehow getting more money, because we've already referenced or said in a prior podcast that making more money does not necessarily lead to greater happiness, right? Now,
Right.
there is
That's
a bit
true.
of a correlation that exists for making more money can create some happiness, but it doesn't necessarily follow that line of thinking. And
Yeah.
I think it's more about autonomy and control over your professional and personal life,
Right,
so that you
well,
can be balanced.
Well, I think that the ability to make those marginal dollars allows you to buy yourself time. And so ultimately your most limited resource in life is time. And so
it is.
my goal is to have $100,000 of income per year, but because I can keep more marginal dollars, now I'm getting $200,000 of income per year for the same work. Well, now I can cut back and spend half the time doing it and still make $100,000 a year, which is the amount that I want to make anyway, right? And so I can decide I'm going to give up that extra amount I could have made, and instead I'm going to take back more time and still get the dollars that I need to live the lifestyle I want and do the things I want to do. But now I can take that other time, put it into my family or into my hobbies or into my whatever the things that I consider important, or volunteering or giving. I think that's also important. I think I'm not the smartest person in the world or the most giving person in the world, but I think I probably know how to best distribute my dollars to the local community or my efforts to the local community more so than the governments that I pay taxes to, or the third parties that would get those extra marginal dollars. If I'm able to distribute those directly to people in need, if I'm able to feel better about giving some of my services for free to people, because it doesn't really, because I'm making those marginal dollars. It's good to give until it hurts, but also the more you have, the more you can give.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that too. And it's less about having all this money just stashed away, because there's a maximum amount, like a certain amount of money increases your satisfaction. After that, the marginal increase goes to zero pretty quickly. That's so it's not so much about adding stacks of dollars to your bank account. It's more about it gives you the autonomy, gives you the flexibility to do more good in the world, and also to make your life what you want it to be. It gives you the opportunity to say no to more money and say yes to more time with the things that you care about.
Yeah, I like.
And so for me and my wife, that's like some of our motivation is.
Yeah, I like how you frame that. It's time and money. It's not time or money. It's some sort of combination of the two that makes sense to the individual. Right. This is all very individualized. For you as a young doctor or even a practicing physician, you've figured this out or are going to figure it out. That there is sort of a sweet spot for you individually that nobody else can define for you, where it's enough money but enough free time that creates the balance. Let me just say, when I made that change over 10 years ago, it's been worth $1 to $2 million in retained income for me. We're not talking about just a few dollars difference, okay? Now, coming back to the fair market value process, for me that makes me feel better. Like, I didn't work harder to get $1 to $2 million more dollars. I worked actually less hard and retained more money at a fair market value, and at the same time gained time and autonomy and boundaries in my world by making that shift to the employment light structure. And so it's the combination of those two things, not just the money, not just the time, but the combination of those that makes some sense to me. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I hear you as a young doctor to be sort of saying, that's what you're going to value too, right?
Yep.
Is those same very things, which I think is important to everybody in the audience. Gosh.
And I think that's very important. That's something that's valuable for people in my generation. That's not just me. It's a lot of young physicians or physicians to be, or people who are going that route. They have that idea that the money is important. They do want to make good money, but they want to have that flexibility and that balance with their time. And
that's good. That's good. So, and that's really the great life. The great life is when you're getting paid the fair market resources for our compensation for your work, whatever that workload is, but at the same time you have the time that you want to do the things that you want outside of that job. This is that balance that we're talking about. But when you find it and when you get to that point, it does create that sort of great life where you feel like you have control over those spigots a little bit more than just a traditional employer does, who seems to control both your time and your compensation totally, and you feel like you've lost some control and autonomy, which then of course leads to those dark feelings of despair from burnout, because you feel like you've lost control. So John, as a young physician to be, make good choices in regards to that. Look at all of your options, explore all of them, and don't fall into the traditional practice model of employment where you think that's the only choice that you have, regardless of the specialty you go into. So. So audience, I'm glad you've tuned in today. Medicine can provide a great life for all of us, and it should provide a great life for all of us. And so as you bring forth your own questions about this, your own comments, we invite them. John and I both do. I know this is a little more unilateral today because he's not been in practice to know about all the great life yet, but he's going to get there. And the more I can tell him and share with him, and you as young physicians or medical students before you get there, of kind of avoiding the mistakes that I've made, the more powerful it's going to be for you to succeed and do well. So we invite your SpeakPipe questions, conversations, your emails through all the social media channels of Doctor Incorporated, and we hope you have a great week.